Everyone is aware that China is currently renowned across the globe for its infrastructure. So how did China look like in the 1950s? If you believe China only recently began producing infrastructure, you are mistaken. As history developed, China's export infrastructural capabilities were always present. Numerous Chinese cities experienced a time that shook the technical community. China built several subterranean cities decades ago that many other countries are unable to construct with modern technologies. In this video, we'll discuss the Chinese subterranean city, a laudable infrastructural undertaking that during the Cold War saved countless lives. China has had a number of issues in the past. After 1949, when Mao Zedong proclaimed China's establishment, it was engaged in conflict with strong nations over its security. Everyone anticipated that China will soon reach a phosphorus state. Yet after a conflict, peace is seldom immediately achieved. To grow into a powerful country, a country must endure many hardships. Perhaps the most dangerous time is in the beginning. After 1969, as tension between China and the Soviet Union grew, the situation in China became tense. The boundary dispute over Zimbabwe Island in the Lumber River was one of the major disputes. At the time, the Soviet Union was a formidable force. In the 1950s, its nuclear arsenal served as a key to power. China was therefore in jeopardy. Mao Zedong therefore ordered the construction of a subterranean metropolis under the Chinese capital in order to safeguard the cities and the populace. Beijing was the principal target for all attackers, therefore the reason. The underground metropolis was built to withstand biological and nuclear assaults. The primary objective of the city was to provide housing for Beijing residents and government representatives in the event of an assault. The project was launched by the engineers. To connect the entire city to the underground city, several tunnels were built. As construction was finished, it was predicted that the city could accommodate 6 million people. All the needs are there in the subterranean city. Restaurants, hospitals, clinics, schools, theaters, factories, and even farms were present. China was ready for any eventuality. Even several locations where the residents might access water were accessible. To protect the inhabitants from harmful gas, ventilation systems were created, and 2,300 shafts were utilized. The underground city was linked to several locations in Beijing, as well as to administrative structures including Xi'annanhai, the Great Hall of People, and the military bases. China had made the decision to relocate half of the people underground and the other half to the Western Highlands in the event of a nuclear assault. So who built the entire underground city? Beijing as a city. Had China the engineers to build this enormous city? It is unexpected to learn that the city was created by locals. More than 300,000 individuals contributed to the building process. The diligent natives went above and above to defend their nation. Even major portions of the city were excavated by hand, including several of its neighborhoods. In order to provide building resources for the underground metropolis, more than a few outmoded structures were demolished. To our great good fortune, this city was never inhabited since it was never intended for human habitation in the first place. Yet, there is no way to refute the fact that it was the most impressive undertaking available at the time. Even though it was not being used, the villagers did not throw it away because they wanted to keep it. Also, the officials pay periodic visits to this place to make sure that everything is in order. Thus, what use does China currently serve for this underground city? The underground metropolis first opened its doors to tourists in the year 2000. However, due to ongoing maintenance, the attraction is presently closed. It had a reputation in the past for being one of the most popular tourist sites in China. Many people from other countries would be interested in visiting this site to have a better understanding of the history of the city. A visitor who arrived to this city in 1969 was amazed by the level of development of the Chinese infrastructure. This underground megalopolis is evidence of the Chinese people's unwavering dedication to their nation's future. They were inspired to do so by their commander, and as a result, they put in an incredible amount of effort to ensure their own survival. In addition, there is a portrait of Mao Zedong in the city, and it shows him working willingly on the construction of tunnels. The question at hand is, how did China acquire such expertise in the construction of infrastructure? When a nation's infrastructure is inadequate, it is difficult for the economy to function in an efficient manner. Toward the end of the 1960s, The idea that a country could make any kind of development was just unthinkable. In terms of the planet's overall infrastructure, there hasn't been much of a significant amount of development done. The majority of nations are interested in either military conflict or military defense. The United States and the United Kingdom, two of the most powerful nations of the time period, were more concerned with growing their influence outside as opposed to within their own boundaries. China was one of the countries that was struggling during that period. Yet, the picture that we see presently is not the same. China now exerts a greater influence over the rest of the world. China now has the largest market in the world. Every day, China exerts more of its influence on the world. The United States of America is likewise having a harder time of it thanks to China. The question that has to be answered, however, is how China rose above its history of widespread poverty to become the prosperous nation it is today. China, in contrast to other nations, has never from the beginning had the purpose of obliterating other nations. It had the intention of establishing a safe haven for itself. And one of the primary factors that contributes to China's flawless nationhood is the country's advanced physical infrastructure. At a time when other nations were trying to catch up with one another and the infrastructure sector was in trouble, China was developing massive cities in only a couple of months. During a time when most other nations were merely constructing shacks, the Chinese were busy constructing roads, buildings, and hotels. When China first started making major expenditures in its infrastructure, the overall value of those assets has increased to several $1 trillion at this point. But the thing that intrigues people the most about China is the manner in which it established a robust infrastructure when other nations lacked essential understanding. The accomplishment of constructing reliable infrastructure may be attributed to the Chinese people. While researching historical studies of Chinese psychology, you'll see that the Chinese people put forth a lot of effort. In the past, regardless of the circumstances, they consistently put in a significant amount of work. They are continually motivated, and their goal in whatever they do is to achieve excellence. Even in modern times, when China finishes projects in other nations and sends its workers there, the people of other countries are in awe of the quality of labor that the Chinese provide. They believe themselves to be in command of everything. A great number of people, including Elon Musk, CEO of Tesla, have praised the workers in China for their level of dedication. Their employees made the underground metropolis a reality and are the reason China has achieved so much in the past. They are also the reason why China has made so much progress. Because of the Chinese people's loyalty to their country and their integrity, enormous projects in China were successfully finished on time. It reveals that China was always one step ahead of other nations' plans to destroy China, even while those other nations plotted to attack China. It is quite evident, looking at the representation of China that exists now, that China had ambitions to maintain itself. Share your opinion in comments. Also, click on this video to watch about another shocking project.